Namaste and good morning. So, we are here to discuss another topic: issues, research issues, and the issues that should consider while carrying out the research. So, for that, ethical issues cases, we are here, and it is a very good questions. And when people ask what are the ethical consideration and research issues in research. So this means, when you plan or carry out a research, especially involving people, where there is obviously the involvement of the people, data, and sensitive information, you must take into account a number of ethical principles about the people, about the place, or some sensitive informations. Among the core consideration, voluntary participation, informed consent, and confidentiality, that is to say, anonymity, and minimizing harm, fairness, integrity, and honest reporting. These are some of the issues or the requirement, the point to consider while carrying out the research. And the common ethical issues in research are which most of the time they appear in our research. They are like unique influence, a kind of influence that when the participants feel pressure to join because of authoritative incentives or other facts. So you are not going to make them involved because of some extra influence or instrumental influence, that you go for that one. And sometimes breach of confidentiality or anonymity. That means when identifiable personal data is exposed without the permission. So potential harm to the participants, for example, physical, psychological, social, or legal harm, especially with sensitive topics. Misconduct in research, such as data fabrication, falsification, plagiarism, and misrepresentation of results. So these four ethical issues are most of the time they appear when we carry out the research. We collect the data and we overcome the situation over there. Why it matters, ethical conduct protects the right, dignity, and welfare of the participants. If you really consider the ethical consideration or point to be noted, then it will actually help your participants to protect their right, their dignity, and welfare. It also maintains or upholds the trust in research and ensure that research are credible and legitimate. Without ethics, research can harm individuals and communities or produce unreliable or invalid results. So research ethics should be there for carrying out a research. For example, let me tell you one example. Okay, suppose a social science researcher surveys high school students about mental health. Ethical consideration requires explaining the study purpose clearly, ensuring students understand they may refuse or withdraw without penalty, protecting their identities, perhaps coding responses instead of recording names, anonymity, safely storing sensitive data, and avoiding any psychological harm. So these are the ethical consideration. One example of ethical consideration, for example, if you are going to take the data of the people which are very sensitive about their physical, social, psychological, and legal condition aspect, we should not compel them to respond to our questions or in our survey at one hand. On the other hand, we should not actually what to say. We should not, miscommunicate or represent the, fake data or something. So, when we talk about ethical consideration at that time, there are some terms that we need to be aware about them. should understand also. Informed consent, confidentiality and anonymity, ethical committee clearance. So these are the terminologies, these are the components that we actually um, need to be very aware when we are carrying out the research. First one is informed consent. It means that the participants receive full information, study objectives, procedures, potential risks, benefits, their rights to withdraw, how data will be used. So, informed consent means you properly tell your respondents about why are you carrying out this research, what is the process, and at any time when they feel uncomfortable, they can withdraw their interview or any kind of information from that research. That is called the informed consent. Consent liनुपर्छ. We need to take the consent from the people. Their agreement must be voluntary. No coercion and ideally documented, signed consent from. So agreement whether they are ready to give you the data or not, they should be voluntarily agree, or there should not be any kind of imposition from the side of the researcher. Another important concept is confidentiality and anonymity. Anonymity, the researcher does not know who the participants are, no identifiers. Confidentiality, the researcher knows who participants are but agrees to keep identifying information private and not share it. Researchers often use code numbers instead of names, store linking files separately, limit access to sensitive data, and ensure secure storage. So confidentiality and anonymity means, anonymity means there should not be the identification of the respondents. You should quote them no identifiers. And confidentiality means you should assure your respondent that you know those information are very really private and not to share for the secondary purposes. A researcher often use code numbers instead of names. So for the sensitive data, and it should be stored properly. There should not be leakage any of information from the from the researcher to the information of the respondents. Ethical Committee Institutional Review Board clearance. So it is called IRB clearance. For most research involving humans or animals, human tissue, sensitive data, researcher must submit a plan proposal to a formally recognized ethics committee IRB, which reviews whether the research complies with ethical standard before data collection begins. So here, ethical committee means there is the ethical committee that actually it's like a censor board. It allows you to go through that research or not, whether you can conduct that research or not, do the activities and data collection procedures and information are really they fulfill the criteria of ethical committee standard or not. That is also important, and the researcher should get approval from the that ethical committee before carrying out the research. For example, imagine a medical researcher project where a researcher interviews patients about their treatment experience. Before starting, the researcher submit a detailed proposal to the institutional ethics committee. After approval, each participant get a consent from describing aims, procedures, risks, benefits, confidentiality measures, and the right to withdraw. Data is stored using ID codes, and only the researcher knows which code responds to which patient. In the final article, the researcher includes ethics approved approval obtained from the name of committee, reference number, written informed consent obtained from all participants, confidentially maintained. So those things are very important for a researcher at one hand and the entire research process, because ethical consideration should be standard, and it it should be, ethically okay. Copyright, intellectual property rights, and patent law. There are three terms that are related to the copyright. First one is obviously copyright, intellectual property right, and patent law in research. What it means: copyright protects original expression. For example, text, images, data presentation, figures of others. In research writing, you can reproduce someone else's content without permission or proper citation. In academic writing, in research writing, you can copy somebody's data, image, or information, or text, or tables without the permission, or let's say the proper citation, without the proper citation. Intellectual property right, IPR, more broadly include not only copyright but also patents for the inventions or novel methods, data rights, authorship rights, etc. Researcher must respect the ownership and contribution of collaborators, co-authors, and prior research. Patent law becomes relevant when research leads to a new invention, methods, and produced product. Using someone else's patented methods data without permission is unethical, often illegal. So, why it matters? Respecting IPR ensures fairness, gives credit where due, prevents plagiarisms or illegal copying, and upholds trust in research communities. Misusing copyrighted or patent materials undermine academic integrity. It can have legal consequences. For example, if you use a diagram from a published paper in your thesis, you must either get permission from the copyright holders or ensure that the use qualifies under fair use or depend on the publisher's journal's policy. Plus, you must properly cite the source. Similarly, if in your research you develop a novel software tools or methods and want to patent it, you must respect patent laws, not present publicly patented code data as your one invented, and include proper acknowledgements or co-creators or funders. Declaration component. Conflict of interest, financial and data availability statements, ethical statement, and plagiarism. When you write a research articles or thesis, most journals or institutions require shortened declaration statements at the end. These declarations promote transparency and integrity. Common declaration include conflict of interest, competing interest. A conflict of interest occurs when authors have financial, personal, professional, or academic relationship that could bias or appear to bias the research outcomes or interpretation. Financial conflicts, grants, employment, consultancy fees, stock ownership, patents, royalties, etc. Non-financial conflict, relationship, affiliation, academic rivalries, personal benefits, personal beliefs. The declaration should clearly list all such interests. If none, a statement like the authors declares no conflict of interest suffer. So conflict of interest, competing interest. And the next one is financial statement, funding and data availability statement. Funding sources, who paid for the research, grants, institutions, sponsors. This is often included to show transparency about possible influences. Data availability indicates whether data supporting the results are accessible in a and under what condition. This helps with reproducibility and openness. Ethical statement, ethical approval and consent should state that the research was reviewed. Research was reviewed and approved by an ethics committee or IRB. You know, then it should also confirm that the informed consent was obtained from participants and confidentiality, anonymity were maintained as per the ethical standards. Plagiarism and originality declaration. The authors declares that the work is original, properly cite source, and does not contain plagiarisms and unauthorized use of others' materials. This also covers self-plagiarism or duplication of previously published work. For example, for a declaration block, ethical approval, this study was approved by the Institutional Review Board of the university name, approval number. All participants provided written informed consent, personal data, and have been anonymized and confidentiality maintained. So this is the example of ethical approval. Another is conflict of interest. The authors declare no competing financial or non-financial interest. Funding. This research received no external funding. Data availability. The data supporting the findings of the study are available from the corresponding authors upon reasons request. Then author's contribution, originality. All authors contributed significantly to the conceptualization, data collection, analysis, and writing. The manuscript is original, has not been published elsewhere, and contains no plagiarism. Why these ethical practices matter, and a concluding thought. Ethical practices and transparent declaration are not just formalities, they protect the participants and uphold their rights and dignity. It ensures the credibility, reliability, and reproducibility of research, build trust in academic and scientific communities among peers, institutions, and society, safeguard the legal and moral responsibilities of the research. Failing to follow this principle can lead to harm to participants, reactions of publication, loss of reputation, loss consequences, legal consequences, and most importantly, erosions of public trust in research. Okay, thank you very much. This is how we discuss simply on the topic of ethical consideration and issues in research. Thank you very much. Have a great day ahead. I will see you in the next video. Thank you.